All right, it's 2:01, so I'm going to get us started. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Edith Juguna. I am the director of the Illinois Education and Career Success Network, and I'm joined by my colleague Sam Nelson from the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, who helped coordinate today's session. We are fortunate to have representatives from 3 Success Network leadership communities to join us to share the lessons learned in implementing learning renewal efforts. We have Dr. Jill Maraldo, Associate Principal for Instruction at Buffalo Grove High School, Jennifer Brambach, Chief Academic Officer at East St. Louis District 189, and Anna Rose, Coordinator of the ICC Tutoring Program at Peoria Public Schools. We're also thrilled to have Nehemiah Ancor, the Learning Renewal Lead at ISB, who will kick us off and moderate the Q&A. We are recording the meeting and this information will be shared. Nehemiah, I'll kick it over to you.
Thanks, Edith. Thank you everyone for joining us. So I'll kind of set the stage here with, I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with ESSER funds and the COVID relief money that the government distributed to Illinois, but this just gives some overall context of what, before we jump into what our district partners are talking about that they've done with their money. So right here is a map that shows the statewide outreach of ISB's statewide learning renewal efforts. So back in 2021, the P20 Council, in coordination with all of our education agencies in the state, as well as stakeholders, district leaders, families, students across the state, developed this learning renewal resource guide. And within ISB, they identified these 4 pillars of programs: interim assessment, social and emotional learning, high impact tutoring, and bridging in transitions. So ISB invested $180 million of our $750 million state set aside of ESSER pandemic relief funds. And then additionally, 90% of those funds, so almost $7 billion, a little more than $7 billion, was distributed directly to districts. So today we're going to be talking about a couple initiatives that folks did with their local dollars of these ESSER monies, and then we'll also touch upon a district that has participated in a state-led initiative and kind of their experience in being part of that. So with that, I will kick it to Dr. Maraldo to talk about Buffalo Grove's initiatives.
Thank you so much. So hi, my name is Jill. I'm a proud associate principal at Buffalo Grove High School in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. Been in this role for about 10 years and sort of proudly led through and past the pandemic. And one of our biggest challenges obviously was kind of how do we help students do that catch-up learning? We have a very short time with them at the high school level. They were coming in kind of post-pandemic with a lot of learning loss. How do we catch them up? How do we help them graduate on time? How do we catch them up both in terms of academic skills, but also credits? So just again, we're kind of centered about 25 miles or so northwest of Chicago. We're a student population of 2,000 students at our school within a larger district of 12,000 students. We're 6 comprehensive high schools and an alternative school. Our school, Buffalo Grove High School, is 53% white, 31% Hispanic, 1.8% Black, and 9.8% Asian. We're about almost 29% low income. Go ahead to the next slide. So we came up with, as we do in education, we had to come up with some cool acronyms. So we came up with a program called SOAR. And this idea was born really out of our student services, a joint effort between student services and our instructional leadership team. SOAR stands for Student Oriented Accelerated Recovery. And this was a real focus on sort of our 50 or so most at-risk students, meaning at risk for not graduating on time. They had fallen behind in terms of their credits. They were not on track to graduate with their peers. And we needed to come up with something that was intensive at the tier 3 level that would help them recover credits and be successful in the classes that they were currently enrolled in. So during the same time as the pandemic, we switched to a block schedule. So we have A-B block, 4 periods each day. So what we did was we assigned this program as a 3-block program. basically the students would meet each day, so a block on the A days and a block on the B days in this SOAR program with a certified teacher. And then they'd be enrolled in a third period of a program that we called Stampede, which I'm going to explain a little bit more about later, but that was more about those executive functioning skills to help keep them on track in their current courses. So we were addressing both the past as well as the present. But what was kind of unique about this SOAR program is we did use sort of a backbone of the Edgenuity online credit recovery courses, but all of the courses were taught by certified teachers, veteran certified teachers. So we used our ESSER funds in combination to hire both teachers to teach in this program, as well as educational support staff to act as support and tutoring in these programs too. We built in enough opportunities for credits because it was a double block for them to be able to catch up on, I believe many of them were 10 or more, behind. So if you would go ahead to the next slide. I mentioned our Stampede program. Our Stampede program was more of a tier 2 intervention. Stampede is aimed at students who are academically at risk in general. That number was about 150. The program, the students would be enrolled in one block, so they would meet every other day. There was a certified teacher at the lead of the Stampede program, as well as student success tutors that were educational support staff that were grant funded. Student services would also push into this program to do mindfulness and stress management strategies with the students. And we would do executive functioning skills. So it was a combination of SEL support and organizational skill support to help stay on track with current courses. They would also have time built into that 80-minute block to just work on missing assignments or current homework with that guidance of the teacher and the tutors that were in the space. Go ahead to the next slide. So in addition to all of this, all of our classroom teachers, and we have about 150 teachers in this building, were asked to provide tier 1 interventions. We provided professional development on those interventions, including best practices for teaching on the block. We asked teachers to be responsive when a program lead from SOAR or Stampede would reach out for missing assignments and so on. And they would also act as a liaison with counselors if there was a specific concern about an individual student. So we really had a lot of communication that would go back and forth in order to make these programs successful. Go ahead to the next one. So one of the biggest things had to do with getting the right people on the bus, right? It's very important. We know Collins's work about having the right people. This was not about hiring brand new teachers and throwing them at our most at-risk students. This was actually about using our most veteran, most successful teachers and assigning them, many of whom volunteered to want to participate in this program within this SOAR program, and then backfilling using funding for perhaps hiring a newer teacher to then backfill in those regular core classes. So that really helped us be successful and have as much success as we did of having those veteran staff members who were able to reach kids and support in multiple subject areas. We did have at least one teacher for each core content area hired for the program. We would double staff it. So we would have, say, like an English and a social science teacher one period, and then like a math and a science teacher the other period that they would meet. We also met frequently as a PLC. Data was our friend here. We reviewed student data constantly. We were progress monitoring constantly, sharing, and then being able to iterate quickly and very nimbly. As a result of such frequent meetings and frequent looks at data, by December of that first year of the program, we realized that we had a freshman problem. Our SOAR program was originally aimed mostly at seniors and juniors, but we realized we had freshmen who didn't even know how to do school. And we had a number of them that were failing. They were failing math especially, but they were really at risk for failing other courses as well. We were able to pull 25 of our most at-risk freshmen, create a mini SOAR program. We pulled them out of their math class with the agreement that they would redo the first semester of the math content during second semester and then agree to take summer school to make up the second half. But then we were able to help keep them on track for their other courses. So again, that wouldn't have been able to happen unless we had funding from ESSER to pay the teachers and the tutors, but also able to meet frequently to share that data and share what was working, what wasn't, and have that feedback from our teaching, like whole teaching staff as well. You can go on to the next slide. So the SOAR program was really built to phase itself out. So in year one, like I said, we actually had 50 students. We had 2 sections of double blocked classes. By year 2, we had cut that in half. We were down to 25 of our most at-risk students, and just had 1 double block section, 1 of each. And then by year 3, which is this year, we no longer run a SOAR program. We do still have our Stampede program up and running, and it's very successful. And we have a guided study program, which is sort of a educational support staff augmented study hall, but we do overlay some credit recovery into that guided study program through our Edgenuity program for students that are still behind in credits. Some stats to share: 65 students recovered credit for all of their classes from our program during that first year. 37 seniors were able to graduate with their peers who would not have graduated on time, and over 280 Edgenuity courses were completed. We took qualitative and quantitative data. We surveyed the students. The students overwhelmingly reported that being enrolled in these interventions helped them be more successful in high school. They felt a connection to school that they hadn't felt before, and they felt cared about by an adult in the building, which we know the research says is so important. Sorry, I'm nursing a fall cold. So one little anecdote that I'll share is we had a student right during the heart of COVID withdraw from school and drop out. I knew her family. I knew her mom. Her single mom owned a business in our community. And later on that summer, as we were developing the SOAR program, and she had already dropped out of high school and was working for her, just working at a local restaurant. I spoke to her mom, and I spoke to her. I ran into them in town, and I described the SOAR program. This was over the summer. And I said, we're implementing this new program, it really would have been great. I explained how we're going to be pushing in with social emotional support as well as academic support. And the student said to me, if there was a program like that, I wouldn't have dropped out of school. And I said to her, well, if you come back in and re-enroll, we'll put you in the program so that you can graduate. She dropped out her junior year. She would have been a senior going into that school year. She looked at me and she's like, are you serious? Can I be in that program? I said, absolutely. Stop into school on Monday, bring mom, sign the papers, we'll re-enroll you, and we will put you in SOAR, and we'll make sure that you get the credits you need to graduate. Because up to that point, she was on track. She just had dropped out of school during COVID. Well, not only did she enroll, she caught up on all her credits for the end of first semester, finished out her senior year, and graduated with her peers, and is now attending Harper College and is in community college. I'm still in touch with the family. That's just one success story, and it's just one student of many, but every student matters. And hearing stories like that, this was a student who had dropped out of high school. She was done. She had written it off, that it was not a place that she could be successful. And when we described the program to her, she re-engaged and she came back in, and it was life-changing for me. I mean, that's probably one of the best things that ever happened in my whole career of 25 years in education. So just really, really proud of that and proud of the program. And that connection to the school, that feeling cared about piece was what was missing for her. And that's what she was able to reattain. And that's what helped her to graduate. And she's a really bright girl, so I'm glad she did. You can go ahead to the next slide. If there is one. I'm not sure. Yep. So basically so sustainability wise, we don't really have that funding anymore for our tutors. So we no longer have the student success tutors in Stampede, but we have as a building allocated staffing for it because we believe in the program and we know how important it is, and we are going to continue it. So we do have a certified staff member in there. We sunsetted our SOAR program, and we don't have that acute need that we had, but we still are continuing to do some credit recovery for students who have fallen behind. And we have guided study people in there, support in there as well. And what was nice is, even though we don't necessarily have the grant funding anymore to support some of these roles, some of the people that were in these roles were able to then apply for full-time positions with us as they opened up. And we have kept some of our staff that we had hired on as grant funded, and they've just been a wonderful addition to our faculty. So I'm really happy about that. We do miss those tutors and that grant funding, though. I wish we still had them. And that pretty much sums it up for Buffalo Grove's experience.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Moraldo, especially for the anecdote. I'll echo what was put in the comments. We love hearing about those stories on the ground, because that's exactly what these funds were meant for. So love that you were able to make that impact in that student's life.
Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Jennifer Broombeck, the Chief Academic Officer at East St. Louis, and she's going to tell us about some of the programs they instituted with their local ESSER funds to help support students' recovery.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Jennifer Brumback. I'm the Chief Academic Officer here in District 189. We were just talking before coming on about whose wheelhouse this really falls in. Me as the academic person, or our Chief of Schools, who's Keisha Garrett. And we both share in that responsibility, which I think has helped quite a bit with the work we've been able to do. It's a partnership here at the district office. If we can go to the next slide. East St. Louis, if you don't know, is on the east side of the Mississippi River. So if you're ever wanting to see that gateway to the west, come to us. You can stand right in the middle of Tudor Street and see right on it. It's a beautiful site. Our student demographics, we have 97% Black students and 1.5% Latinx. We have 100% low income, a 19% mobility rate, and a 69% chronic absentee rate, which really is a, I would say, barrier, but a challenge when it comes to trying to do some recovery for students. Go on to the next slide, please. So what we did in our very first year, I'm thinking back to March 2020, and, across the state, everybody's closing schools. And we decided from the get-go that our students couldn't stop school at the end of May, that we needed to push on through the end of June. And we just extended our school year. We didn't give anybody an option for summer school. And we marketed it as a extended school year. All the teachers stayed on staff. All the students came. And we did see some waning attendance the closer we got to the end of June. But it was really a good thing because, with e-learning and everything else, we knew that students weren't getting the breadth of the curriculum that we needed them to get. So having that extra 4 or 5 weeks of school was very, very helpful. We did use our ESSER funding to pay teachers their daily rate since we were asking them to extend the school year. And that was a good investment for us. And one of the things that I noticed data-wise the following year is that there wasn't as big of that summer gap that we sometimes see in the summertime. But we didn't start the next year in person, and we were just running through some data recently, and I don't know if it was just a bad memory that you don't want to remember, but we were in remote learning for a full year. We didn't come back to in-person learning until March of 2021. And so there were some real needs and gaps that were left with student learning that summer school wasn't going to cut all the time, which led us into a need for evening school for our students. We offer a 6-period schedule at the high school, and so that doesn't give a whole lot of room with 20 credits needed to graduate. That doesn't give them much room to have much recovery time. So we offered up an evening school that began in school year 21, and it started off with 2 sessions. Students could recover a half credit at each session. We used our courseware program through Edmentum, much like Edgenuity, but we use Edmentum products. And we were really starting to leverage to our CBE pilot school, which is our alternative high school, in recovering credits faster for students. So we really redesigned our alternative high school. It wasn't just for students that had been suspended or had discipline issues. It was more aligned with rethinking how students can do high school. So that helped us as well during the day. But really it's that evening component. Now this year we're up to 4 sessions for our evening school so that students can recover a little bit faster. you know, before listening to those intervention pieces, we didn't come up with good names for our interventions, but we did put in place some interventionists. And those were teachers that we gave them, and this wasn't just high school, but it was K through 12. We gave them the task of pulling and doing that tier 3 individualized interventional support, just to fill those gaps that were left by students participating in e-learning. So again, those ESSER funds became very valuable to us in order to pay teachers after school and during summers. Now, just real quick, back to summer school. We're still doing summer school. After that extended school year, we did do a year where it was open enrollment. Anybody who wanted to come, any teacher that wanted to have small class sizes to do some more focused work, we were able to do that summer. And since we had summer school last summer, enrollment wasn't as high. We didn't have as many need for teachers, but we're still trying to fill those gaps. In terms of challenges, though, we had some unintended outcomes. So, you know, that pesky little constitution test, you know, students weren't taking it during that year remotely. So we had a whole group of kiddos last year that were getting ready to graduate, but hadn't met that graduation requirement. So we had to find ways to pull them in and get that assessment given. And, you know, we also had students that really, and families that loved the flexibility that e-learning provided and were asking for that. Can I do e-learning evening school? Can I do e-learning summer school? And, you know, trying to stay within the requirements within school code and do quality programming. You know, they've not always been super excited about having to do those things in person, but I think that is one of the challenges that we faced, that students got exposed to a different way to have education. But when we came back off the pandemic and school closures, we had to kind of go back to the way we were doing things before. So that was a challenge. Next slide, please. So in terms of our successes, yes. This time last year, we realized we had 48 students who were not on track to graduate. But by spring, all but 5 met their graduation requirement through the use of the evening school and the CBE pilot at the alternative high school. We did see an increase in our graduation rate by 1.7% between 2019 and 2022. Which was good. We really have been digging into those data points a little bit more this last couple of weeks because we're not really satisfied with our graduation rate. It could be a lot better. So we're going to continue to look for ways to take what we're already doing and revamp it a little bit. But in terms of our lessons learned, and I heard this with the previous presentation, we were waiting too late to intervene with kids. Waiting till their junior and senior year is waiting too late. We really have to start looking at their freshman year after that first semester and really plan their support a lot better. And another thing we noticed is that our counselors were grade level counselors. They weren't like sections of the alphabet counselors. And so the freshman counselor knew everything about the 9th grade year, but not a whole lot about 10th, 11th, and 12th. And that was having a really big impact on students' ability to be successful toward that graduation. So we did some training this summer and totally revamped that counselor-student assignment, and we're hoping to see some payoff as far as that goes. Next slide. All right. Then in terms of our plans for sustainability, we are very, very lucky in that we have a really robust grant writing department. While ESSER really provided a lot of support with these after school activities, we have used other grants and alternative funding sources to help continue this. We were just renewed on our CBE pilot, so that's going to be very helpful. And then too, changing that outlook of what the alternative high school is like. And then focusing on that earlier intervention that I just spoke to, but really we're putting a lot of stock in that improved student supports through our counseling department. It isn't just the teachers, it isn't just the administrators, it isn't just the parents. It requires the counseling department and all of us working together for that good. Okay.
Thank you, Jennifer. I love that you guys are really using that data to help inform improvements that you can make going forward. As you know, as we all know, the work of recovery is hopefully not as intense as it was, back in 2021, like you're saying, but definitely work to continue to do to support students. So I think it's great that you guys are using that information you got strategically in your lessons learned. Next, we are going to hear from Anna Rose. She is the coordinator of the high impact tutoring program at Peoria Public Schools, as well as the director of bilingual and multicultural programs. And another hat she wears is the foreign language coordinator hat. So I'll kick it over to Anna.
Thank you. I couldn't find the unmute button. Well, just like you said, I am the coordinator of the ICC tutoring program that we started last year. And that's our layer that we added to our own tutoring program that we have already established in our schools through ESSER funds. This was an additional funding that we got. ICC is our local school where kids go to for that 2-year prep. So it's our dual credit partner as well for high school credits, and it was great to have them join us and help with the learning loss that kids have had during the pandemic and post-pandemic year. I also am a director of the bilingual multicultural programs, which I oversee. We're getting an influx of immigrants in our district, and it's brought another crisis to our district with a lot of kids coming to our schools that have had disruptive learning loss. And it's not only COVID loss, it's that they haven't been in school for 5 to 6 years. And we're getting them at all levels, from primary to middle school and high school. And the hardest struggle is the high school level, because what do you do with a student that has had only up to 6th grade schooling? So that has been a big challenge for us. And foreign language, I work with a grant that I got to help establish that courses to make it more interesting for kids to learn a second language. So I wrote a grant for 3 years and got $40,000, $90,000, and then $50,000 this last year for students to experience going to actually the country where they're learning the language. So we had our high school students go to Puerto Rico to be immersed in that Spanish exposure, and then we're having our French students go to Louisiana in January to get that exposure as well. So I've been working really intensely on getting students exposed to beyond the curriculum, getting them academically prepared for the next grade. If you can go to the next slide, please. So this is our breakdown for our schools. We have 12,800 schools, and I oversee about 2,000 students that are limited English. So there are newcomers, and we also have students that are classified as EL. We have 15 primary schools, 13 middle, 3 high school, and we have 6 alternative programmings, a total of 27 schools. And our demographics, if you look at that, we have a pretty high percentage of our Hispanic population, which I focus on. We have 1.5 of the Asian Pacific, Black 59.56%, 11.56% of the Hispanic, and multiracial we have 7.66, and white 19.82. Next slide. So our focus for our schools, our primary schools with the ICC incentive, which is our third layer of support, is focusing on students in the primary levels, getting them before they get to the middle school. So we focused on 3rd through 8th grade, and we really hit hard on 3rd grade just because research has shown that if they're not learning to read and write and be literate in 3rd grade, then that kind of shows the outcome of students dropping out of high school. So we're focusing on those grades as well as the primary grades in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd. But with ICC, we're focusing only on 3rd through 8th graders. And we have about 275 students receiving services from that outside source. And they have certified teachers coming in to the school during the day, and they also hire our own teachers to service students after school. So they get an extra layer. We have the students group based on the sessions and individual needs. Sometimes we have groups that are of 3 students, and sometimes it's a one-on-one grouping, depending on the need, and we match the tutors to the students. In addition to that, we also have trained our teachers to work with students that are behind, and we look at our data, our NWA data, looking at which students are below the cut scores of 39% and below, and focus on those students. And every student in the school has an individual learning plan, even if they're not on the watch list of failing. We also want to get the kids that are on that cut so that we can push them forward and get them to where they need to be by the next benchmark. So we focus on reading just because that has been the biggest factor that we've seen, that we've gotten as a result of the pandemic and the online learning that we offered during the pandemic. And of course, it's not the same to get that in-person instruction and that small group intervention time with students. We also have tier, like I said, tier 1, our teachers do a workshop. And with the reading workshop, they focus on those students that are working at grade level and the students that are below grade level. We do font Sentinel testing to get their guided reading levels so that we're focusing on what students need, and we group them together. We also have monies that we use through ESSER to pay teachers to come in addition to the ICC tutors, to come in and work with the teachers during that workshop model so that they're also pushing into the classroom and helping with a guided reading group so that students are all getting what they need. We also work on this for math as well, but our main focus with ICC has been reading because we want to make sure that students are reading at grade level. That's our goal. Next slide, please. And this is our school report card. I thought it would be interesting to look at where we were in 2018 to 2019 compared to 2021 to 22. If you look at the breakdown of which schools were designated targeted and comprehensive, and those numbers have gone down, which is awesome with the work that we've done and the focus that we've done to increase those schools to be in the commendable and over exceed our expectations. We focus on those comprehensive schools with ICC tutors. So we really wanted to make sure that they were getting that extra layer of support to help those schools that were struggling. So most of our ICC tutors, except for one school, is working in the comprehensive schools. Next slide, please. So our mission for our district is to make sure that all students are academically achieving through that personalized learning plan that we have for them. Also, we have a big focus on social emotional learning and making sure that we provide that equality for everyone to be where they need to be as far as their academic potential. Our goal is for all students to be reading at grade level by third grade. That's why the focus is on primary and focusing especially on the third graders. With third grade, we offer tier 3 support with the tutors that we hire, as well as providing online resources. Those students are given in kinder and first grade. We have a platform called Waterford. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's a reading program as well as a math program that gets kids reading at grade level. And we've had a lot of success with that. We've had kids start at a very low range and moved to the reading and go through the phases of reading and have had an 85% growth in those students coming in as non-readers and being at grade level by the end of the Waterford classes that they have online. We have it set up where students are online 20 minutes for reading and 20 minutes for math, and that's a daily for kindergarten and first graders as part of that intervention time. For our students from second grade to 8th grade, we have another online resource that's called Lexia that they get on to help support that learning loss. In addition to that small group guided reading time with students or that tutoring time with students. Next slide, please. So our strategies for implementation are to look at our fall NWA data to identify which kids are below that 20th percentile, because those kids that are below that 20th percentile are the ones that we really focus on with ICC tutoring to get that extra layer. And we review the BAS assessment, which is gathering their assessment to see where they're reading at what guided reading level, so that we can start from where they're at and build their reading skills. The focusing is on intensive intervention with the tutoring at the targeted and comprehensive schools. We have 11 of them, in which 7 of those schools, ICC provides that extra layer of support. We look at where the needs are based on NWA. We look at the learning curriculum on NWA called the Continuum, and we get the strategies for reading and the strategies for math that are needed to push the kids forward to the next level. We collect that data at the beginning of the year, middle, and end of the year, and we analyze the effectiveness of the tutoring and effectiveness of the intervention that teachers do. We also look at progress monitoring on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, to look at where students are and what they need, and if we need to restructure the tutoring, because we want to make sure that it's fluid and we're not focusing on the skill that they've already mastered. So we look at that frequently so that we're changing that intervention and focusing on something different. This year, our students are now being assessed with a standard-based report card, which is looking at the specific skills and standards that the students need to know by a certain time, and then we want to focus on what we need to do to get them to that level 4, which is getting them mastered to go on to the next standard. We have a total of students enrolled in the ICC for the fall of 119, and by the spring we had 176, and this year in the fall we have had close to 300 students. So we have increased the number of students that we're providing services for. There's a total of 45 tutors. They're trained to help students with reading and math, but like I said, our focus is helping students with the literacy acquisition so that their reading improves. The challenges that we face is scheduling the tutors, gathering information, gathering just principals to get their schedules and things like that. So that's a challenge. Also, sometimes we face the challenge of attendance. We have 60% of our students that have attended, and we have 80% of our tutors that attend. So that's a challenge that we face sometimes. We know that if students or tutors not available to provide those interventions and that support, then the effectiveness won't be as great. We also use for those ICC tutors a system that they have called Pearl to track the progress. They give the students and the tutors surveys to see what they think about the tutoring, where they think they need support in. They track the attendance and they track the data to share with us. So we're working together in partnership to look at all that. I also work with ISU to help look at the data and to see what we need to do to make those improvements. Our school also last year went to year-round, we call it a balanced calendar, because we noticed that the learning loss was great, and we not only have students that are academically behind, but socially behind, because those kids that were first graders or second graders skipped that preschool and that kindergarten year. So it was really hard to see them in a classroom and be interacting successfully, because they lost some of those skills and didn't learn how to, get along with one another, learn sharing, learn some of those skills that they learn in pre-K. And so that was a little bit of the challenge that we had, and we thought that we would pilot that balanced calendar. We surveyed parents, we surveyed teachers, and we decided to adopt it last year. And what it is just going year-round with only 5 weeks of break in the summer, and 2 weeks off in the fall, 2 weeks off in December, and 2 weeks off in the spring. So that allows teachers and students to have some time to rest and time to re-energize for the next part of the year. So that's shown that teachers come back more energized and engaged and ready to take on the next part of the semester. If you go to the next slide, please. Our successes and lessons learned, we noticed that it gives the students an opportunity to extend their personalized learning plans, especially in reading. Students are familiar with what they need to improve. We give them a student profile sheet that shows them where they are at the beginning of the year with all their assessments, from NWEA, guided reading, NWEA reading and math, and writing. And it lets them know where they need to be in the middle of the year and at the end of the year. So when parents come for conferences, students are able to let them know that this is where I am, and this is where I need to be in the middle of the year, and this is where I need to be at the end of the year. We also have training for parents to let them know what they need to do at home to help students and support them. A lot of the funding comes from ESSER, but I also have funding that I use from my Title III funds for ELs. And we also provide parents with adult classes for ESL, and we also provide them classes to learn how to use the computer, because a lot of them are very unexperienced with computer. A lot of them didn't even know how to turn it on. So that has helped us so that parents can help, and that partnership with home connection and school is really important, because they follow up with what we do in school to help their students at home. Most students enjoy that individualized tutoring that they have, that opportunity with the ICC tutors or the tutors that we hire from the outside. We have 91% of our tutors that say in their survey they enjoy coming to the schools and working with our kids. We have 87% of our students that have said that they enjoyed the tutoring. And challenges, like I mentioned before, scheduling, coordinating with the administrators in the building, and attendance. Next slide. plans for sustainability is to continue working with the same group of students so we have progression, so we can see where the students were at the beginning and after. This year, we have gotten monies, which I'm so excited about, to hire more tutors through our senator. And she was able to provide quite a bit of money for us to hire those tutors. We're going to hire about 5 to 6 tutors per building of those high needs buildings, and provide 1 tutor at each building that are in that exemplary or in that comprehensive or commendable building. We're going to try to increase the one-on-one tutoring for those students that need that extra support, and increase the after-school tutoring sessions. We do offer classes during intersession during that 2-week period that we're out for parents that want the students to come to school because of work or because of not having a place for them to go. And we also invite those kids that are behind, that need that extra support. So we offer interventions, and we also offer a project-based learning. So students are targeting skills, but they're also enjoying what they're learning and learning new things. We focus it on cultural and diversity so that students are learning world life experiences rather than just doing interventions. They're also gaining more knowledge. And we will continue to offer that during intervention, during intersession, offer interventions throughout the year, and offer after-school tutoring and summer school to continue with that. High school also has credit recovery that they do during summertime. We use Ingenuity for them to use that. So we also have an increase in our graduation rate. And we are starting with a new program that we just started. It's called HiSET, and that's for students that are coming from other countries that are behind credits, or that are behind, like I said, that haven't been in school for 5 to 6 years. And that HiSET helps the students in their language because it comes in Spanish, and it helps them gain their GED by the end of that time period that they're taking these courses. So I'm really excited about that program. We're going to continue working with ICC and continue to see the successes that we've been seeing throughout this year. We noticed a positive increase in our academics and a positive increase in our tutoring, and teachers interested in coming and helping and supporting.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Anna. And it's really great to hear how you're both taking advantage of our state-led initiatives, which high impact tutoring is one of our learning renewal pillars. And I would be remiss if I did not give a shout out to our institutional partners, IBHE, ICCB, ISU. And as you mentioned, you guys are working with Illinois Central College, but there are other institutions throughout the state that are providing that similar service within their geographic region. So it's really great that you're, leveraging these statewide resources as well as using your local dollars to kind of fill some additional gaps that students need. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, Anna. So I believe we are at the Q&A portion. It was really great hearing from all 3 of you. I got a couple questions I would be interested in hearing your thoughts too with the 10 minutes we have remaining. So some of the strategies you guys implemented required a change in the ways that adults support students. For example, staffing the SOAR program with veteran teachers to help get students on track, and then changing your counseling practices. What advice do you have for other districts about what it takes to get buy-in from staff for these kind of changes?
I'm really glad you asked that. I could just jump in. I think, the communication was key, right? Like, it was key for the professional development of our staff as a whole. It was key to have the ability to meet frequently and to share both data as well as just anecdotal and qualitative feedback of how the program was going, to give the teachers that were sort of in the trenches, as you were, an opportunity to share what struggles they were having, whether it was absenteeism or just a feeling of disconnection that the students might be experiencing with school, and to provide instructional coaching as well, really went a long way in helping make those programs successful. But I think it all just came down to communication, just frequent, often thorough, deep communication.
The only thing I would add to that, because I think that's exactly spot on, is that you let them, those that are doing the work, be part of the creation process. You let them have voice in what does this look like, and and that way they can tell you what resources they need, and you can supply those for them, and then come back to the drawing board when you need to. But if they're part of that creation process, it gets them a whole lot more solid in their commitment to it, and not just the buy-in to it.
I think another thing that we have to keep in mind too is that we bring our parents into the mix, because that parent involvement piece is huge. Parents don't know a lot, especially if you're talking about immigrant students, where it's their new experience in this community, and they're very much scared and unwilling to come forth because of their immigration status. So we really need to embrace them and provide services so they understand what is important and what they need to do, because a lot of times the students feel like they have to help their parents, so they choose to work rather than go to school. And we know that we want to offer at least a trade for them to be able to do, while they're learning English and while they're acclimating into this new country.
Thank you all for those responses. It's one of the ones that I hear that I constantly hear when talking to districts and other stakeholders, really nothing about me without me. So it's encouraging to hear you guys are making sure you're engaging all the important folks that will be doing the work and are affected by the work. Another question I have, it's been really helpful to hear the creative ways you're thinking about sustaining your learning renewal efforts. As we had mentioned, ESSER 3 funds are, we have about a year left to obligate those, and a little more time than that to spend them down. And so it's great that you're thinking proactively about what's it going to look like to support your students going forward. Apart from funding, what kinds of supports would be most helpful to districts as you continue to implement and improve some of these efforts that you've already undertaken?
As we've kind of shifted, even this year's ESSER funding, we're, like I said, we're no longer funding maybe some of the tutors, we're funding other programs, of course, but I think that coaching, the access to resources, best practices that can be shared from the state are really helpful, and helping to vet some of that, because sometimes it's a little bit like sipping out of the fire hose, especially when there was so much grant funding available. So many companies kind of came out of the woodwork with these, kind of cure-all solutions, and it's, we don't necessarily have time to vet those, also have help with that. And then I think too, like for us, it was, what could be sustained that doesn't even necessarily require the funding. It's just some of those strategies and practices, right? Like bringing mindfulness into the classroom, building relationships, within the classroom too, really has gone a long way, and that has carried forward into our current work.
I think for me, in our district, I think a lot about policy and code. What is it that can change in policy and code to help us meet these needs, especially, I'm not real sure, it's a big issue where you are, Jill, but I know what you're talking about in Peoria, is that, we have students that are coming to us who haven't been in school ever, American school ever, or if they have been, it's been 2 or 3 years since they were enrolled in school. And so to get students to where they need to be in order to graduate with their original cohort group, or we're going to have to really take a look at what the state will allow us to do in order to accelerate that for students. Because in all honesty, for some students, it's just the exposure piece. They need the time to sit down and crank out the work that they need to do, whether it's project-based, CBE style, or, can they use Edgenuity their first go-round? Programs like that, that's where I feel like ISB could help us, is provide the framework legally for us to do things.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I think that the biggest push is trying to get, like, Ingenuity is great, but it doesn't come in Spanish. Directions are given in Spanish, but the content is not in Spanish, so it kind of defeats the purpose of putting these high schoolers on a program they can't do. That's why the other program that I mentioned, the High Set, is more applicable to that. And if they were to change Ingenuity so that it provides those services for the kids to be able to take those courses. A big push that I started this year with my staff is project-based learning, because I think that teachers are tired. It was a long haul with trying to learn Teams, because all of a sudden they have to teach through the computer, and then trying to get the kids back into that classroom environment was a big shift again, and reteaching. So this year I decided to move my staff with project-based learning so that the students are enjoying, and teachers are also enjoying what they're teaching. It gives them the freedom to choose what they want to do, building the standards in there, and the kids don't realize that they're learning because they're having so much fun. And we're choosing things that interest students. That's the main thing, is making sure that students buy into what they're learning and enjoy it, because that's where you get the learning. That's where you progress.
Thank you guys for that feedback. I definitely, it's nice to hear similar things from other folks. So I'm glad you guys are echoing things about best practices and what sort of regulatory guidance we can provide and advocate for. And so thank you all for sharing that with us. We've got a couple minutes left, so I'm going to kick it back to Edith and Sam to close us out. But thank you all so much again for sharing your experiences. And most importantly, thank you for the incredible work you're doing to support students with these funds and everything else you're doing to make sure students and families and educators and administrators, everyone in your whole school ecosystem are recovering as quickly and adequately as possible throughout this unprecedented time in schooling. So Edith and Sam, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Nehemiah, for helping facilitate our discussions. And a big thank you to Jill and Jennifer and Anna Rose for being with us today, and also taking the time to prepare such great information to share with our colleagues across the state. As Edith mentioned, this webinar is being recorded, and we will make it available on the Success Network website. And speaking of websites and webinars, I'm just going to drop in the chat that the Success Network, we have another webinar coming up on Tuesday, October 31st. That's about increasing opportunities for underrepresented students, lessons learned in advising. And during that webinar, we'll hear about innovation in approaches for advising students, especially from underrepresented groups, as they pursue pathways leading to high quality careers. And we'll be hearing from colleagues at Rockford Public School, Elk Grove High School, and Lamoille High School. So again, make sure that you put that on your calendar. We look forward to seeing you on October 31st. We appreciate everybody for being here today. And with that, we will say thank you and sign off.